A NASCAR team owner just went on camera and said his team was called a liar, a thief, and a cheater in a courtroom. And instead of staying quiet, Denny Hamlin opened his phone and typed 4 words that have the entire NASCAR world talking. But what he said next is the part that nobody is covering, because there is a question buried in this story that could blow this entire case wide open. Let's start with who Chris Gabehart is, because if you do not know him, this story does not make sense. Gabehart spent 13 years at Joe Gibbs Racing. 13 years. He was Denny Hamlin's crew chief, the man who stood on the pit box and made calls that helped one of NASCAR's most popular drivers compete at the highest level week after week. He later became JGR's director of competition, which means he was not just running one car. He had a view of the entire organization, every driver, every strategy, every number. His base salary at JGR was reported at $1 million per year before bonuses. In November 2025, he left, and that is when everything changed. JGR launched an internal investigation. What they found, according to court filings, was not just an employee who quit. What they found was a folder that Gabehart had set up on his JGR computer, linked directly to his personal cloud storage, and inside that folder was some of the most sensitive information a NASCAR team can have. Here is what JGR says was in it: full post-race audits and performance analysis for the entire 2025 NASCAR season, complete payroll records, including job titles, contract lengths, and compensation plans. A tool used to calculate and project employee pay. Driver salaries for both the 2025 and 2026 seasons. Sponsor revenue figures for 2024, 2025, and 2026. Pit crew analytics. Tire data used to predict race results. That is not just one spreadsheet, that is the entire engine of how a top-tier NASCAR team operates. And here is the detail that JGR says seals it. Gabehart allegedly accessed those files on the very same day he met with Spire Motorsports co-owner Jeff Dickerson to discuss his new job. Same day, JGR filed its lawsuit on February 19, 2026. The case is being heard in the Western District of North Carolina by Judge Susan C. Rodriguez. JGR is seeking at least $8 million in damages. They also want Gabehart barred from working in a similar role at any NASCAR team for 18 months, based on a non-compete clause in his JGR contract. Gabehart admits he took the files. He admitted it in court, but he says he never shared them with Spire. His legal team says the deletion of text between him and Dickerson happened on November 15, 2025, before any lawsuit was threatened, so he had no legal obligation to save them. And Spire's attorney went further, saying that what JGR calls trade secrets is basically a spreadsheet with information anyone could find. Now, here is where it gets complicated. JGR has also admitted in court that they currently have no direct evidence proving the information actually made it to Spire. So let that sit for a second. JGR says Gabehart stole tens of millions of dollars worth of sensitive data. Gabehart says he never gave it to anyone, and the judge is being asked to sort out the truth while both sides are still in the middle of a NASCAR Cup Series season. The judge has already converted the original temporary restraining order into a preliminary injunction. That injunction requires Gabehart to stop possessing any JGR trade secrets and to return anything he has. It also bars him from working in a competition director role for 18 months, though he can still work with Spire's Truck Series, late model, and sprint car programs, as well as Andretti Autosport IndyCar. JGR wants the trial held by November 16, 2026. Spire and Gabehart want it pushed to May 3, 2027. Their argument is that a 2026 trial would make it almost impossible for Gabehart to properly defend himself while the race season is still happening. And a telephonic hearing to finalize the trial date is set for this Tuesday. That is where things stood when Jeff Dickerson decided to speak publicly. During a conversation with Jeff Gluck, Dickerson defended Spire and addressed being called a liar, a thief, and a cheater in court. He said that nothing presented before the judge has amounted to evidence against Spire. And then he played what he clearly thought was his strongest card. Dickerson pointed to Spire's alliance partnership with Hendrick Motorsports, one of the biggest and most successful organizations in the sport. His argument was that JGR refuses to acknowledge this alliance in court because doing so would undermine their effort to make Spire look like a small, desperate team that needed to steal its way to the front. He said JGR knows who their partner is. He said they just do not have the courage to say it in court. That is a bold move. Bringing Hendrick Motorsports into this conversation publicly while litigation is still ongoing is not something most people would do. But Dickerson did it. And then Denny Hamlin saw the clip. Hamlin did not hold a press conference. He did not release a statement. He went on X and posted a response that was short, direct, and made very clear that he is not interested in playing games with the public version of this story. He called out Gabehart directly. He said Spire hired someone who stole tens of millions worth of information, lied about communications between them, deleted those communications, and is now being paid double his previous salary to work on Spire's truck program. Then he asked two questions that he did not answer. He asked what Dickerson had called Richard Childress, and he asked whether it was Dickerson who had been leaking information after Race Team Alliance calls. Those are not throwaway lines. Those are targeted. The mention of Richard Childress is specific and deliberate. The mention of Race Team Alliance calls, which are private meetings between NASCAR team owners, suggests Hamlin may have information about conduct inside those meetings that he is not fully revealing yet. He dropped those questions and walked away. That is the cliffhanger that nobody is talking about enough, because this case is no longer just about trade secrets and deleted texts. Hamlin just hinted that there is a broader pattern of behavior here, that this is not an isolated incident of one employee taking files home. He is suggesting there's a history of Dickerson operating in ways that other people in the garage have noticed and remembered. And if that information ever makes it into a courtroom or onto the record publicly, this story gets much bigger. Remember what JGR's attorney said in court. They believe Gabehart accessed those files on the same day he met with Dickerson. JGR's position is not just that an employee went rogue. Their position is that this was coordinated, that Spire knew, that the timing was not a coincidence. Gabehart spent 13 years building something at JGR. He had access to everything, and JGR is saying that on his way out the door, he decided to use that access to benefit the team that was about to pay him double. Think about what double means here. His base salary at JGR was reportedly $1 million a year. Double that is $2 million. For a team like Spire, which is not in the same financial tier as JGR, that is a significant commitment. That kind of money says we want you badly enough to pay you more than a premier team was paying you. The question JGR is asking is simple. Why would they do that? What were they paying for? Now go back to Dickerson mentioning Hendrick Motorsports. He said having Hendrick as an alliance partner proves Spire does not need to steal anything. And on the surface, that seems logical. If you already have access to Hendrick's resources and knowledge, why would you risk everything by taking files from JGR?